Well, they actually did it, the madmen. It wasn't just an idle threat, they really went and made another season of Futurama. After the mixed bag that was the movies and Comedy Central era, the show proved that while it had some good ideas left, it was mostly content to just spin its wheels. No show can stay good forever. So we were all fine with just letting it rest, especially after the surprisingly strong, conclusive ending. The show was happy. We were happy. Then the announcement came out and the panic slowly set in. We learned it was direct to Hulu, which was not a good sign. We saw some of the episode titles and had to pray these were just the unconfirmed ravings of put-upon tabloid article writers like Rage Against the Vaccine and Zapp gets cancelled. But it turned out to be real. The one ray of hope that remained was that, well, the voice casts were the same. The animation studio was the same, even some of the original writers were coming back. Ultimately, it was impossible to tell from the outside looking in what the quality would be. So the only thing that's left now is to see the result of each episode for ourselves.
The Impossible Stream.
So here's the plot. Fry wants to watch every episode of television ever made, and so he straps into full bondage gear so he can piss and shit himself all he wants, like a true esports gamer, while he binge watches all my circuits. But oh no, it's gonna kill him if he runs out of episodes. So Leela and Bender go to Hulu to pitch more episodes. Hulu. Now I know Futurama's got a rich, storied history of not giving a fuck about the plot, just so long as it's funny, but I don't know, I just don't think the characters would act like this. I don't think Leela actually would encourage Fry to just be a lazy pig and sit in front of the TV for literal months.
Fry, you're wasting your life sitting in front of that TV. You need to get out and see the real world.
I don't think any of these characters would voluntarily help him put himself in a suit they told him is incredibly dangerous just so he can binge watch television. At least not for free, right? I mean, he does work there.
Get to work, you lazy boat bag. Ow!
And why do they only now decide to check on him for the first time several months after starting? The big reveal that Fry left the suit 2 days early just out of nowhere, no one noticed, is also kind of dumb. He never went back in that room or saw everyone working and decided to say something. Also, not a big fan of, oh god, is Fry really dead? No, he's not. Look, these aren't the worst problems to have, right? At the end of the day, it's just minor plot details that only exist in service of the comedy, right? So, is it funny? When you boil this episode down to what it's trying to express, it's just one big meta joke. It's an episode about how they're making this episode. You're watching TV about someone watching TV. Look, there's even the writers right there. I thought it was just going to be relegated to the obligatory joke about it at the start, but nope. From start to end, it's about itself.
So what do you say? How about picking up all my circuits for 20 episodes?
With an option for 20 more.
Maybe a movie.
Get it? She's describing this season. I have this suspicion that they wrote this line, and maybe even this entire episode, just so it could be cut up into the season teaser.
Here's our pitch. Remember that show?
The one that got canceled 3 times?
New episodes of that! That's our pitch.
Maybe there's some lingering frustration over being canceled over and over, but that feeling doesn't necessarily become 22 minutes worth of material. Like, I get it, you were off the air for a decade, it's not that interesting. I really wonder how the people who didn't even know there was a gap are gonna feel. They're just gonna watch this right after Meanwhile, and that ending will mean absolutely nothing. It wasn't a decade's wait, it was 22 minutes, and then it's right on to the next episode, which they had to start by instantly undoing their own ending. When I was a kid, Devil's Hands wasn't the bittersweet goodbye to the whole series. It was just the episode that took place before the movies. So we went from, and then they lived happily ever after, to, and then they stopped doing that so they could binge watch all the new hit programs available on Hulu for only $13.99 a month. Actually, now that I say that out loud, that sounds very much like something Futurama would do.
The Middle Ages.
But in practice, it's not really that subversive or edgy or sharp. Like, I'm not expecting one of the Execubots to whip out a trafficked 2-year-old slave child and snap its fucking spine and start slurping the adrenochrome straight out of its still warm neck or anything. But when they have such scathing commentary as, people watch on 2 times speed, robots are writing the scripts. It's like, yeah, we've seen this sort of thing for a while now. We've been mired in this shit for so long that it's just not insightful anymore. This episode's part of the show's legacy now, you know? Is this really your best foot forward?
Children of a lesser bog.
So it's 20 years after Kif had kids, and now Amy is a mom. But Kif has to go on some mission or whatever, leaving Amy to fend for herself as the kid's parentage is called into question. Now, despite this basically being a character has children with the personalities of a rock episode, you know, a hallmark of any show that's been on too long, I actually don't hate this idea, but Amy is just willing to be a mom now? That's a little sudden. Like, it's neat that you coincidentally released this episode 20 years after the ending where you said she'd be ready 20 years later. But that doesn't mean Amy was ever interested in having kids. She was like this cute, clumsy, rich party girl type who constantly shrugged off her parents trying to push her into making them grandchildren. But as of the start of this episode, she's just instantly okay with it now. And this is despite the ending of the episode on which this is based, basically saying the exact opposite about her. I'll be ready then. You know? There's like the 1 ounce of character development she ever got because it actually made her a little more interesting. Oh look, she's running away from her responsibilities as a parent, even though she wasn't actually the one who got Kif pregnant, but whatever. She also feels like she's losing her kids to Leela, but like, no. Leela shows no interest in being anything other than an occasional babysitter. So when the ending is framed as this surprise maternity test, oh, she might lose her kids to Leela, it doesn't make, you know, sense. She doesn't want them, lady. You're panicking over nothing. And this is on top of the ending feeling like a total ass pull.
Do you or do you not love those children?
More than I knew I could love anything.
Which is all that truly matters.
Oh, so you were just trolling then. You followed them to their home planet and gave a whole speech about a maternity test being automatically triggered just for it to be as simple as, oh, well, you said you love them. They're yours, I guess. And you're not gonna ask any input from the biological parents? Leela? Scruffy? Boy, you sure lucked out that Kif's culture doesn't care about them at all. This is all kind of dumb, and so when the characters are just standing still at the end with a single tear rolling off their collective cheeks, it's a little uncomfortable.
Who wants treacle?
Kif seems kinda out of character too. Oh, he's gotta rescue Zapp from some tardigrades, but he shows no hesitation about gunning them down, really? Which seems incredibly un-Kif-like to me. He should be this quivering blob of hesitation and panic, not, oh, I have a mission, let's go. Like, haha, normally he's spineless and worn down, but no, he's not. Whoa, so epic. You expect this character to act one way, so when he does the exact opposite, it's really cool. They did at least capture that he's more competent than Zapp, so it's not like a total middle finger, but yeah, I really did not care for this stuff either. Also, he just kills a guy. Feels like it's supposed to be this epic moment where he owns that guy for being rude to the bunch of animals. But like, murder? Man, I was slaughtering them before, but now I know they have kids, just like me, who also has kids. So instead of killing them, I'll kill this random, unrelated stranger instead. What the actual fuck? Jokes aren't that great either.
How could you do this?
Do what? Suck the jelly out of the jelly donuts with a straw?
And there's this whole segment at the start of them making candy, which was fine, I guess. There's no real point to it, so it's just random for the sake of it for a few minutes, and then it's over. I did like when they showed porn of Kif's race, and they were just touching fingers, though. That was good, you know? You got one good joke. Congrats.
How the West was 10100001.
So the professor and company head out to the Old West to mine Bitcoin. Now yes, I know they've done topical before, but it kinda doesn't even matter because the entire extent of this one is just, oh, what if we made gold rush jokes, but you cross out gold and replace it with Bitcoin.
Dog dumplings. It's just a danged Ethereum.
Oh, we mentioned Ethereum. It has been mentioned. If you want to do a Bitcoin episode, I can accept that, but it's basically a bit of additional flavor here and nothing else. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of the creationism episode, but at least they had tons of jokes that were direct directly about things creationists believe. Even the iPhone episode was at least about social media, whereas the premise of Gold Rush but Bitcoin is also an excuse to shove as many old jokes and characters into one space as possible, no matter how slim the connection might be. Well, there's a robber stereotype in the Old West. Who do we have that's a robber? Oh, I know, let's stuff Roberto in there. Well, the professor owes a debt, so that's a perfect excuse to bring back the robot mafia. The Old West had a cheatin' gambling man type, so let's bring back the Borax Kid. We're not even referencing the good parts of Futurama anymore. Okay. Love how Leela just casually NTRs Fry a bit too. Like, this guy's a walking soap crystal. Weren't you guys married just a little while ago? Hey, this is a great setting for a cowboy type strumming his guitar, so you know what that means? Let's bring back Bender's guitar from the worst episode of the whole show. You know, that episode that's total ass. Oh, so that's why they're referencing it. I gotcha. I started to crumple up into a little ball when he pulled that thing out and started singing about ass for like a solid minute. Yeah, the ass jokes are really excessive too. There's like 800 of them in this episode alone. I miss when it was just like this cute little catchphrase that you'd just get every now and again, instead of them grabbing the fucking back of my skull and burying my nose in it like a dog that peed the carpet. Reminds me of those kids who tell a joke at the Thanksgiving dinner table that gets a genuine laugh out of everyone, so they keep repeating it hoping that it has the same impact each time. But it doesn't.
I'd take a shift myself, but I am already in my pajamas.
This isn't even limited to this episode. The whole season thus far has been completely egregious. Remember the whale biologist? Remember the man witch? Remember the veterinarian? Remember Dave Spiegel and his owner fluffers? Remember the slap jokes?
Slap recognized.
That list is just a fraction of the total, by the way. I'll put as many as I can find on screen. And you might think I'm nitpicking, like, oh, is it so bad to see Bender say ass again? He did it all the time. But it's a matter of degree. If they brought back something just once or twice, I could shrug it off. But it's the fact that it's so relentless. When 80% of the humor is just, hey look, it's something from an episode you remember, I have a hard time justifying the existence of the new stuff. I wanted them to take some risks, you know? Show me some new things, otherwise why not just go back and watch those old episodes again? Would you really be satisfied with a slight repackaging of every joke, every gag, every routine that they've already told before? Forever? Yes, I know they did it all the time back in the Comedy Central episodes, but it was just as painful then. Go back and watch the movies and take a drink every time they bring up something that you've already seen, and you will feel your liver shrivel up in real time. And I want to be clear, not everything they bring back is member berries. Like, I'm not sitting here going, fuck! I can't believe these fucking hacks brought back Hermes. To some extent, it's just how their universe works. But when, in another episode alone, they shove Tinny Tim and the Moon Farmer and his 3 robot daughters and the Luna Park mascot all into one episode for no other purpose than for me to point at the screen because it's something I recognize, it racks my body with cringe. Anyway, this episode puts some Dwight stuff in there and it's a little forced. Like, there's a whole teenage rebellion thing in there with Dwight finding his dad in the outdoors dumb and stupid, which, fair enough, that's pretty standard for his age. But then Dwight wants to, like, emulate Roberto for some reason, and then Roberto manipulates Dwight to the point where he gets mangled. Yeah, how'd that work out for you? And then magically Dwight is just back to loving Hermes again, and he rescues Hermes in a way he could have done on his own. Okay. Despite all that, tentatively, there's at least a handful of things I thought were neat. The setting is fun, if nothing else. And I also liked when the prospector guy put the thallium into the machine and it started making microchips, because it reminded me of Factorio.
Parasites regained.
So, Nibbler has brain parasites and is slowly becoming stupid. So the crew have to shrink down to his litter box to eliminate them. And it's the worms from Parasites Lost. Yes, dear. Then Nibbler morbs and says, nah, actually it's extremely cool and epic to have the worms eat my brain. Except this time they're evil because they have parasites of their own. And also it's okay to kill those ones, I guess. This one was easily my least favorite so far. Like, why bring the worms back? Why? You're gonna have to provide an exceptionally quality story to justify doing this. Otherwise, it just seems like you're digging up the corpse of a much better episode because you couldn't think of anything original.
These parasitic worms should be making nibblers smarter, like when Fry had them.
Do the worms do anything interesting? Not really. Is there some new spin? Barely. Oh, you want to know why they started hanging out in a gross-ass litter box for this episode? It's so they can make a bunch of Dune jokes.
It is pronounced Dune.
Like, I get it. I got the comparison. You don't have to shovel it into my mouth. More like, this episode is Dune. I think I figured it out. They're too reliant on making these basic associations and assuming that alone can carry all the jokes for this episode. Oh, let's take Dune, but it's in Nibbler's litter box. Oh, Amazon, but it's Mom. Oh, let's take the Old West, but it's Bitcoin. Oh, we got Hulu and streaming, but it's Fulu and all my circuits. Drawing a connection between these surface level similarities is a start, but on its own isn't much of a joke, especially when, again, none of these really go any deeper than what I just said. It's just the ornithopter, it's just the sandworm, and I could easily imagine someone just not giving a single fuck if they've never read or seen or heard about Dune before. A lot of crying in this episode too, which was actually uncomfortable to sit through, because they're trying to make me take all this shit seriously after they're done telling jokes like,
Process the dung.
It's pronounced Dune.
This is the second time that characters have all been standing around crying, by the way. And it gets really hard to sit through each time, to the point where I sunk down in my chair and had to turn my eyes away. Occasionally the animation will look a little off too. Like I'll vacillate between going, yeah, that looked okay, and oh, I don't know about that, buddy. Every once in a while, they'll hit you with something that just looks super wonky.
I feel a song coming on.
What the fuck? I do want to emphasize most of it looks fine, and I don't think it got hit as hard with the ugly stick as The Simpsons did. There's just a handful of shots that look a shade off to me. Anyway.
Related to items you viewed.
Wow, I actually thought this one was okay. Let's not go crazy though. It was alright. If you're okay with it is very modern, it is about something happening right now, then it's not bad. But it does mean more of your enjoyment is tied to, like, if you're personally invested in Amazon at all. If you don't really give a shit about Amazon, that's 90% of this episode's humor right out the window. The jokes are also pretty surface level. Let's do a little experiment, shall we? Come up with as many criticisms of Amazon as you can in 8 seconds. Ready? Go! Okay, everything you just came up with was in this episode. Like, Alexa's a glorified wiretap that slightly mishears your requests. People in the warehouses are overworked, shattering fragile items, driving small businesses out of the market, paying a steep subscription fee for free shipping, making it easy to buy a bunch of useless crap you don't need, and so on. These jokes are fine, I guess, but they're all very boilerplate. Like, this is all stuff I could have easily found on Twitter in the last few years. But instead of a 19-year-old bisexual taking a break from his gay furiosies, having armpit sex with each other to enlighten me is why the latest in corporate excesses means I should become an anarchist. It's a bunch of stodgy writers who are about a year and a half too late to any of the jokes they're trying to make due to the length of a television production cycle. There's at least some fairly decent stuff in there, and that's when it goes more balls to the wall with the premise. Like when the mom facility starts to bloat up and swallow the entire universe, or when it seems like mom's gonna shut it down but she doesn't go through with it because she's still getting all the profits, or when the issue resolves itself and nothing changes at all. That's the stuff that gets me, at least a little more than like the dialogue-based gags.
What a defective lump.
Decorative lamp.
No.
And it's a shame too, because it was one of the show's strongest suits. I did like that Fry and Leela are just actually together now though. Glad to see they've had enough of teasing us after 20 years. It's genuinely sweet, and it's one of the only completely nice things about the season so far.
I know what you did, XX Mass.
So after a needlessly long bout of exposition, like seriously, only established fans are gonna be watching. Otherwise all your reference jokes wouldn't land.
Normally I I get mail delivered to my ass.
The professor goes back in time to set Santa from naughty to nice mode. Didn't need to see them whip out his time machine and literally play a cut-up version of the same sequence of the universe being destroyed from that episode, with a few bits of past episodes and even disenchantment for good measure. It's as if the writing is constructed specifically to traipse through as many references to past episodes as they can possibly string together.
My species dies when we reproduce.
Stop.
But I'll go alone to minimize the chance of anyone becoming their own grandfather.
Stop. Or like how this episode is yet another Santa episode. Comes off so insecure, like, were they worried we wouldn't like the new stuff, so they gotta put in some of the old stuff? See? It's something you like. Or did they think, oh, well, they liked the time machine before, so they'll still like it if we do it again, right? Anyway, the plot finally starts 11 minutes in when Bender and Zoidberg become friends. They drunkenly go back in time to kill Santa because now that he's nice, they're alone on the holidays. Okay. And there's some time travel shit in there, and they try to hide the corpse in the future or something. I don't know. I'm not touching the time travel logic. The writing is just so fucking off now, man. This one really hit me, how much has changed. Like when they reveal the ending is actually, oh, it's the professor's fault that Santa got switched to naughty mode. Oh, so that's why they brought up Fry coming and his grandma. So they could literally draw your attention to the fact that they're just doing the same ending again.
Oh, I've made a complete fry of myself.
Oh my god. And that's why Santa went around saying cookie like a goddamn 1-year-old, even though he's always been rather articulate. It was just a bait and switch to make you think he was in nice mode. Dumb. And it's also why Santa's naughty nice switch was designed to have rotational symmetry. It's just for this twist. Hooray! Hey, wanna know what the mystery of the writing was? Santa was just pretending to be murdered the whole time. And he wrote it to own Bender because he became friends with Zoidberg. Haha, got him. Bazinga.
You take Amy's Venmo? Sure.
Venmo. I guess some of the scenes of everyone hanging out with their various families was cute. You know, it's something.
Leela, if you don't marry him, I will.
But they were married! I was kind of surprised they kept Amy's kids around too. Didn't think they'd come back. Oh, but it's lore inaccurate to say that La Barbara cares for Hermes. Can't believe they forgot such a crucial detail, you know? That she's a stupid bitch. Oh, and this was Coolio's last appearance too. Thinking about that is so fucking depressing.
Yo, Santa Bot, I'ma drop my Futurama Xmas list for 3023. Y'all ready for this?
No.
Rage against the vaccine.
So, COVID-19. Yep, straight up. Mutates into whatever dumb, sound-alike name they came up with, and everyone starts getting infected with a rage virus. So then Hermes pulls this insane, moronic theory out of his ass that it's a zombie virus? Cause he's Jamaican, I guess? And he gets pissy, like really pissy, when people bully him over it, because I mean, that is stupid as fuck, man. And then he goes on an overlong quest that takes up half the episode to make a working cure made of voodoo magic, and it turns out that was the correct answer the whole time, all the while he's getting cucked to high heaven and back right in front of his fucking face for the 8 millionth time. Wow. Blatant. I genuinely think we're meant to be on his side. Oh, Hermes is the reasonable one. You know, the scene where he thinks it's zombieism is where they should have inserted something more future-y, but like, voodoo is real, and in reality, it's a bunch of pseudoscientific nonsense. So when the ending comes around and their in-universe solution is what is in real life pseudoscientific nonsense, it's like, isn't that the exact opposite of the message you're trying to convey here? So you make fun of Dr. Banjo and turn him into a Joe Rogan dig for being an anti-science crackpot. But then you also say the answer is not science.
Can you assure me there's absolutely no science in this vaccine?
Nothing but 100% Louisiana swamp voodoo.
So he was right? This is a pretty confused mythos you got going here. What are you even trying to say with this? Man, I fucking love thinking about e-celebrities. I care so much.
Dr. Banjo Experience Podcast Experience out.
Not that the rest of the humor is particularly great. Ever wanted to hear jokes the show already told? Again?
Kinda mild.
Man, that was funnier the first time you did it.
Y'all see a dugong from Macon, run him down. He absconded with my daughter's dowry.
Man, that was funnier the first time you did it. But then add some dead on arrival COVID commentary for good measure. And here I thought I was gonna have to spike a rock straight into the hornet's nest that is internet politics to even discuss this episode. But luckily, I don't have to. I was expecting this to be a bunch of preachy rage bait, when really, it's mostly just incredibly easy jokes and surface level observations. But now with Futurama characters.
It's a highly contagious Omicron variant.
You've seen real life people not wear their masks correctly. Now get ready for Hermes to do it. Wait, I thought he was supposed to be the reasonable one. But if he's not doing it, then like, are you saying masks do nothing? No, seriously, what the fuck are you trying to say with any of this? When the show got topical, that's usually when it was at its weakest. Like when they made jabs at Obama's birth certificate. No one is going to give a shit about that in a few years, and that's if they even cared the first time.
Tell him worm medicine helps.
Oh, I'm dying. I think this was just an ill-fated idea from conception. Is the best venue for a collection of dated topical pandemic jokes an episode of Futurama? Is this really what you come home to entertain you after 12 hours in the McDonald's sauce mines? The hot takes of which we've already seen every possible permutation of in fucking Facebook boomer minion meme format. It's as if the veneer of these characters actually being characters is totally gone. They don't bother putting in the effort to make this into its own universe anymore. This is the fucking future. Can you at least try to give the illusion that the year 3000 is its own universe? What if instead of a Zoom call, we had a gloom call? Yeah, man, I was chomping at the fucking bit to see the professor wear a lion face mask on accident. I was going to literally burst into flames if I did not get to witness this. Then there's the ending, which is kind of manipulative, no? The professor gets the shot and becomes instantly happy about it. As the sappy music swells up and Hermes stares directly into the camera and delivers the message of the episode. To say it's heavy-handed is to understate things. Not that I trust Hermes' judgment anyway, because they shoot the needle through the professor's arm. And just so we're clear, this would still suck even if they landed on the exact opposite opinion. Can you imagine? Fry's about to inject himself and they smack the syringe out of his hands and it explodes on the floor. Thanks, guys. You really saved me from getting autism. And the syrupy sweet music swells up as everyone embraces. It's funny, but only because they didn't actually do it. Even if you're on this episode's side, is this what you really want? Is this why you watch Futurama? I'm sure if you're against the vaccine, then this messy, aggressively unfunny, confused nightmare episode is bound to change your mind. I'm sure the fact that it forcibly makes you docile and complacent while your wife slobbers all over another man will make you want to take it even more. You know, for a message episode, you're really not doing yourselves any favors with how you're conveying it. I will always think back to the Garbage Ball episode, which handled it best. It didn't end with Fry turning to the audience to tell us we all have to do our part, not to litter. No, at best they make it some future generation's problem. And when the only person to object is Leela, they tell her to shut the fuck up because she's a woman. What an honor, you know, being the worst episode of the entire series. The other shitty episodes must be super jealous right now. The only redeeming qualities are that, I guess, there's one or two things I liked. Farnsworth and Wernstrom fighting over whose shot was more dangerous got a smile out of me, shockingly. And you know what? The New Orleans setting was fun because it reminded me of The Parish.
Map gets cancelled.
Man, based on that title alone, I was gearing up to be seething with uncontrollable fury. But really all the stuff about getting cancelled was just really tame. It's so inoffensive, so barely able to even manage a blip on the radar that I almost feel bad criticizing it. It's like getting mad at an infant. Little egg-shaped head-having bitches. Why don't you try getting a job? I think my biggest problem with this episode is that it feels like it's not really about anything. Like, here's the plot. Kif's had it and takes Zapp before a jury. Alright. By the way, it was more than a little weird that Zapp, like, used Kif as a loofah. I get that he has to be hilariously Omega evil for the plot, but it just didn't feel true to Zapp's particular brand of asshole. More like a bad episode of SpongeBob or something. Anyway, Zapp has to go to sensitivity training, yep. His instructor, Dr. Kind's methods are that he abuses them right back, okay. Then he takes them on a simulated mission, which turns out to be real. Alright. And then Dr. Kind wants to get revenge on the dupe by stinking up this planet's air supply with a durian. Okay. How random. Then both Leela and Zapp refuse to shoot him, so Green Lady gives the authority to shoot Dr. Kind to Dr. Kind, and he kills himself. What? Then Zapp says Dr. Kind taught him something, I guess, and that's the end. Not really sure what I'm supposed to take away after that. I thought this was about Zapp getting cancelled, not his instructor's a terrorist and he has a durian. Zapp gets cancelled is like the inciting incident. It's not the theme or the lesson, nor does anything really have anything to do with him by the end. It's questionable if he really had a change of heart, and I would ask if going through with it is even a good idea, because if you change that about him, then he isn't what we found interesting or funny about him anymore. But it doesn't even really matter, because the episode barely even seems to care if he went through it or not. It kinda ends up getting sidelined to Leela's half of the story, where she takes over Zapp's job after being unhappy with the dead end that is package delivery. Setting aside the fact that it's a little weird that she went from like Amazon delivery driver to military commander just immediately, like she put in her application 1 hour ago. Not gonna promote any of these guys. She has a crisis over whether to stop the dupe from fucking these creatures out of their air rights. Or actually, maybe she doesn't have a crisis because she triumphantly facilitates the signing anyway. And then she gets fired and just goes right back to Planet Express. There's no real reason for that either, except the episode's over. I thought she was unhappy in this job. So instead of doing anything with the interesting elements it sets up, the episode is just content to let things fizzle out. At least we got something new for once in the form of these little knobbly groper guys and their air planet and Dr. Kind. You know, that stuff was neat, but it felt like it was gonna connect in some way. And then it didn't. Dr. Kind lands and they grope him and he likes it, I guess. And they can't fire because it'll kill them, but he fires and it kills himself and not any of them. Okay. Feels like I'm watching the show go through an identity crisis. It both begs for the world it's in to be expanded, yet is piss scared to tiptoe outside its own comfort zone. And for the record, I'm not asking for a change to the status quo to make for a good episode. You just have to do something interesting with the story elements you provide. This one's barely about its own premise, and when it's even on topic, the commentary is so tepid it's like asking what I thought of the temperature of the water I drank last night was. I don't know, it was fine, I guess? What kind of fucking question is that?
The Prince and the Product.
What the hell was that? To be fair, it gets a little more coherent once you realize this is their anthology episode for the season, where they're all toys. The Windows one was not great, but mostly I didn't feel much of anything watching it. The Cars one was also kinda just whatever, although seeing the crew as cars was really off-putting. At least they were all human-shaped in the previous segment. And it was pretty funny that their own idea didn't even lend itself to any plot at all, so they had to stick a parody of The Ring in there just to make it work. But when they got around to, behold, Leela Egg, what the hell am I even watching anymore? Imagine watching this with your family, or like in a restaurant or something. Between shivers from the obnoxious AC settings and drinking too much Sprite, you look up at the TV and you get Leela Egg. Yeah, man, I got this really funny show. You should check it out. It's so good. Okay, yeah, sure, I'll check it out. Let me just throw on one of the new episodes. Oh. I'm very curious who they think the intended audience of this show is.
You'd better run, Egg!
That's to speak nothing of the connective material, though, which is genuinely, and I mean this, the worst, most disgustingly unwatchable shit Futurama has ever put out. Actual 0 out of 10 random nonsense, the only saving grace of which is that it's short. I didn't need to see Leela absolutely single-mindedly determined to cuck Fry. I really didn't need to see Fry fight for her right to cheat on him. Like, Fry gets actively angry that Leela wouldn't be allowed to cuck him. Here's hoping none of this episode counted. Oh, it was just a prank, bro. She was under a spell or something. The end, haha. Okay, that doesn't retroactively make all those scenes suddenly extremely tolerable to sit through. It's like their apology. Oh, we're sorry that we're like making a shitty episode on purpose. It's not canon though, don't worry. You know, Fry and Leela being sweet with each other was like one of the only genuinely nice things about this season. Don't even get to have that now. Lovely. It was actually pure pain to watch this shit. Oh, it's a parody of bad melodramas, bro. I don't care. Assuming that's what they were trying for. Man, you sure showed those bad episodes of TV by making a bad episode of TV. They must feel pretty pwned right now. All of the jokes ranged from I felt nothing watching this to this actively gave me internal hemorrhaging, but holy shit, was this ever like getting fucking flashbanged. I did not need to see this.
This isn't the rule book, by the way. It's a takeout menu. I'm gonna have the pad thai.
Okay. Thanks for sharing. Remember the World of Tomorrow guy? Remember the Gypsy Machine, which they already brought back 2 episodes ago? At least there's only one left, right? It has to be better, surely. I mean, these late season anthology episodes are always the hardest to sit through, so, like, it has to be better, right?
All the way down.
Well, shit. It actually was. In this one, the professor creates a simulation of the entire universe, complete with its own Planet Express crew. The rest of the episode is the characters essentially shooting the shit about simulation theory, and it's genuinely very good. I will say I'm not crazy about the first few minutes, where I think the jokes are pretty weak, and later on the plot goes on a few unnecessary detours, like Bender at the strip club, or showing us several minutes of simulated Fry and Leela going on a delivery, the crew mining into the sewer lines. That could have been cut down to just one line of dialogue. I would have traded all of that for more simulation theory stuff. And the ending animation was pretty awkward, sadly. I still felt the emotional impact of the ending, but the final shot had to pull it all together and it kind of fumbled. Still, there was a lot to like about this one. I'm just gonna start listing things off. I like that they come to the conclusion that it doesn't really matter if we're real, and that the highest level of real isn't the only one that counts, because it's our experience that matters to us. I like that Fry is the one who gets to make this point too. Like, I know he's the dumb one, but he's not an infant, you know? And it's not his only personality trait. I like the little Inception mindfuck of Bender rebooting in the real world, quote-unquote, implying the one we've been watching all along is also a simulation. It's not subtle exactly, but it's cute that for all we know, he actually was rebooting. And we don't get to know for sure if this universe is a simulation or not. I'm actually a little surprised the Planet Express crew didn't go out and try to overload their universe's CPU to go check, but I guess that would defeat the point of the episode. And I like that a lot of the episode format is basically a roundtable discussion about simulation theory. It was actually the best part of the episode, just Amy and the professor debating the merits of how the professor's lazy software mimics real-world physical laws, even though that's not how quantum mechanics works, right? The ball would just be under one cup. Right? Or maybe it's just another subtle clue that this universe is a simulation. But on the whole, this is pretty much exactly what I wanted. We finally got away from excessively topical or digging up old episodes. Well, mostly. And we got a really interesting episode about simulation theory. Not that Futurama has to tackle sci-fi in order to make for a good episode, but the writing was just so much stronger and more interesting here. They actually had something they were trying to express. A good bit of the jokes actually got a smile out of me too. This episode is proof to me that a good modern season of Futurama is entirely possible, and I would actually recommend this episode if you've been hesitant to watch. I just wish the rest of the season was like this. This is what we could have had. So far, Hulu seems content to quintuple down on the absolute worst habits of the Comedy Central era, relying way too hard on established canon and past characters to the point of them appearing for quick, unfunny jokes or in the backgrounds of shots where they really don't make any sense being, obnoxious catchphrase humor and jokes, quote-unquote, that are nothing more than thinly veiled references to past bits. They've had 2 full seasons and 4 direct-to-blockbuster 99-cent bin films to get these worst habits out of their system, and instead, they seem content to relish in it.
I'm going to allow this.
At least some of those old Comedy Central episodes are genuinely great. No caveats, no asterisks. But so far, this season sucked ass. I'm sorry. I really wanted to like it too. I did not come into this with the intention of hating it, but it's genuinely just not that good. The show can no longer come up with great ideas or stories of its own. It can only evoke the great ideas it once had. There used to be this great sense that this universe could show you anything, and the show had this razor-sharp wit too. It wasn't just a big pile of ass jokes and old characters. Now it only has the power to remind you of shit you've already seen, either in the show or in real life, and not even make lukewarm commentary on it. And if you boil all that stuff away, what's left? Nothing? A handful of one-liners no one will remember after they're done watching the episode? Here's hoping the second half is better. It's not going to be, though. Anyway, that's it. Thank you for watching, and be sure to check out my music. First 100 listeners will receive a free copy of The Antidote.
This cocky ass and I can watch that. Ask her while I'm drunk. What kind of music do you like, Maria?
Hippo hop.
To those animals are so fucking funny, they make me wanna march without looking.
So then perhaps my ass might be of value to you in some other way?